Hello, everyone. Welcome to TARTLEcast. Good morning. Good morning. If you are watching us in the studio here, you will notice that we have the Earth up on the screen. And we here at TARTLE always drive back to this idea, is that it's your world. You know, and what's the old statement? It's your world. I'm just living in it.
Yes, yeah. That's you remember the 80s movies? Well, you probably were born then, Alex, but there was these 1980 movies that were high school and they were really cool and had like Molly Ringwald and they were just like
Breakfast Club kind of
stuff like that. Yeah, and it was just kind of like the whole idea was, it's my world. I screw the rules, screw everything. This is and I know that's like an adolescence and a growing up and understanding you becoming, there's a metaphor for that, you becoming an adult, and going through that ritualistic process of, having the ability to be able to perceive and be self-aware and all that. But,
puberty of body, puberty of mind.
yeah, exactly. But whenever I look at, and because we can go selfish.
Yeah.
When we say your world, or we can look at it and say your world. And now I'm feeling a responsibility of service.
Yeah, we want to kind of flip the perspective on what we talk about with your world. We have all seen, all of us, that in that concept of your world, ego first, materialism, all these things have created a lot of problems. This idea of that we have our own isolated identities and we're so separate from one another, that this fundamental concept of our view and our interaction with one another has created a world of limitation and also a world of disparity, disunity, detriment, war, famine, all the things of the like. But that definition of how we even looked at it in terms of the 80s and bringing that to now, and this, even ideas of like the American dream, and then the rest of the world kind of chases that idea because we post up in the limelight because we're these, the king of marketing, essentially, in media, that paints this very selfish picture for what's going on here. And it's been detrimental to our mind, our evolutionary development of like global consciousness, and it's also harming that planet. So at TARTLE, when we look at this message and this idea of your world, it's not the delivering that message of your world to say, oh, it's just about the ego. No, it's about your responsibility of this world. It's the one that you live in yourself, right? This is my personality. This is my identification of me. But it's also your world in the totality, the macro sense of everything, how you identify and how you interact with that full world. So when you look at that, how that's baked in, it's no longer just about me. It can't be anymore. That's driven us to the brink of oblivion. Our climate, species going extinct, not having enough food for certain people in, specific areas. That shouldn't be like that anymore. That should be that wake-up call for your world. And understand that your future is going to be dependent on the health of your world. The one within your mind, the one you interact with in your local town, and all the other things that are interconnected throughout this globe, and it's 7.5 billion people, that are indirectly affecting one another. So your world needs to be a focus in a more holistic, inclusive sense, rather than one that is very separative and very ego-driven.
Yeah, no. Whenever I hear your world, I'm always amazed, especially those of us that whether we live in Europe or we live in the United States or Canada, in these Australia, maybe even parts of Australia, where we're so privileged, and we were born into this. And we go on Netflix and we watch this documentary and we see this guy and he's in the rainforest and he decides to put his saw down. He's like, I'm not chopping the rainforest down anymore.
Right.
And we applaud. We sit on our comfy couches, eating our bowl of Frosted Flakes, and we just applaud. And we even some of us may shed a tear. Mm-hmm. And we're like, you go, guy. You awesome. Great job. I'm glad you put the saw down. You're not hitting the rainforest. That's what needs to happen in this world.
Yeah.
And then we turn around and we hop on Amazon or we go to Walmart or whatever, and we purchase the same shit that's causing them to have to go out there with the salt. It is our responsibility. We're the ones that's consuming this material.
I bought a $3,000 couch from Crate and Barrel, and it's got teak wood from some Amazonian rainforest.
Yeah.
You know, stuffed with the fur of a tiger, you know, yes. And like human skin acts as the leather. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But then it's like well, you know, they haven't evolved completely yet. It's the us versus the them. They need to get their act together. No, this is an equal playing field. The responsibility of this globe lies on every single one of us.
Right. And just because you may sit in a country that's more developed, it doesn't exclude you from responsibility of how you interact.
100%.
Just because you have access to more things and there might be a perception that you're eco-friendly, that doesn't mean like, oh, I can spend more now. It's almost like that. It's almost like that idea. It's like, you know, you're poor, and then when you start to make money, you're like, oh, I can now better my lifestyle. You know, now I have this idea that I'm wealthier, so now I should be consuming more. It's okay to consume more.
But with more privilege comes a greater responsibility.
How many times does it's even like more power, responsibility? It's like that Superman quote.
Yes, exactly.
You know, this is not science fiction. This is not a fucking comic book, all right? This is your world with human lives dependent on it. Think about how shook people are when they see a dead body at a funeral. They've never seen a dead body in their entire life.
Right.
Okay? What happens when 275,000 people die at once during a tsunami?
Right.
Do you know what a pile of 275,000 bodies looks like? No, you don't. But I can tell you right then, it would change your entire perspective on life, how you treat others, and how you treat this planet. Because you realize because you bought that couch, because you overconsumed, your lack of respect and responsibility for your world has in some crazy dimensional interconnected effect have added to the instability of the climate that is creating tsunamis or typhoons or whatever it might be of the like. You know, if you find comfort somewhere, it has to be balanced by discomfort. So realize where that might be and look at those choices to say, I may have a gain here for me, but what's on the other side of it?
Yes.
Don't just look about you. It is your world. Yes, it is. And it is your life to live.
What people don't realize is it's all interlinked and chained together. What happens in Indonesia is going to affect Canada.
Yeah.
You may sit there in your little bubble, because that's what we sit in, these little beautiful comfort bubbles of consumerism. You may sit in that little comfort bubble, and then you have the ability to be able to spherically look at everything all around you. But at the end of the day, the decisions that you make now, like especially here in the United States, the amount that we consume, we're blaming China and India for pollution, and then how much food waste are we throwing away in restaurants?
How many products are you buying from Walmart that were made in China?
Exactly.
Are you kidding me?
The systematic.
How many of your spices you're cooking your food with are imported from India? Just so you can get that stupid little spice jar, okay, at Trader Joe's, sitting there on a shelf, and you can feel good about buying that saffron.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Think about the amount of human effort and tax just to get that thing shipped from India, which is a country, by the way, you've never been to because it's too expensive for you to fly over there or you don't have the time to travel there. A piece of saffron made it over here for your convenience.
For $5.
Yeah, you know.
So how did it become so cheap?
So how did it become so cheap, right?
Considering you take that and go all the way over here.
Because our idea of our world is that we have become so economically efficient that it's phenomenal, but we never looked at what cost to that efficiency.
What cost to the environment?
Yeah.
And what cost to humanity?
Yeah. And people have a hard time looking at what's going to happen tomorrow for them. And then when we try to talk about your world and that world 40, 50, 60, 70 years from now, it seems so out of the frame of reference. But it's not. You got to understand the choices you make now for your world and how you look at your world create a stream of cause and effect, a line of probabilities. And you're driving it towards that brink of oblivion with our probabilities. But we ignore it because we don't bring that future-looking frame of reference into play. We don't actually recognize the cause and effect of what we're doing, the choices we're making. So when we look at something, when I talk about your world and how our company is describing your world, we are the masters of our own problems. We have created these things. We have defined what humanity has looked like, but we defined it without balance. So when you talk about your world, it can't just be about you anymore. Everything is too inextricably interlinked. So you need to look at your world and the fact of me, what I do, and how that also affects everybody else, the planet, the species. When I take a breath of air, okay, I'm going to pull it in. This air is currently around me in my atmosphere, and I'm going to let that breath go out. Carbon dioxide being released, other gases. Does that just sit in this little local area? That carbon dioxide can go anywhere across the globe.
Mm-hmm.
This whole system is interlinked, just in the sense of your breath. I don't even have to get into thoughts or you purchasing an item. But realize that every breath of air you intake is also shared by 7.5 billion people. Think about that. Really ruminate on that thought. And if you can see the depth in the value in that type of thinking, that will change how you make your choices and how you feel about your future and how you actually want to respect your world, your planet. Because yes, it is your world and I am living in it, but it's also my world too. So let's look at that balance together, but not as separate identities, but one as a unified identity. We're human beings. Recognize the species we have wiped out. 99% of all species that have ever touched this planet have gone extinct. You give it enough time, it's gone. What do you think? You're special? This is not a function of being special. It's about a preservation of life. These comforts and enjoyments that you feel now in your world will cease to exist. They'll cease to exist for your children. Those beautiful blue skies, you won't see those anymore. And this is not a function of negativity. This is a function of realism for what your future will look like because of these short-sighted choices you're making at this very moment. So when we talk about your world and the problems we have created together collectively, we need to solve them collectively. And if there's a tool to come out and solve that, to talk about those thoughts, choices, behaviors, those things that have driven us to that brink of oblivion, let's solve it with that data. Let's come together in a unified means as a collective of human beings, regardless of how we look, regardless of how we think, and look to solve our future.
So we have 7.5 billion people on this planet.
Right.
Why is it their responsibility, all 7.5 billion, regardless of what country you're from, where you're at, why is it their responsibility to sign up at TARTLE?
It's your responsibility to sign up at TARTLE because it's everyone's responsibility to support this system that supports us. Simple as that. If you want to support the earth because it gives you your food, gives you your opportunity, it gives you your choice, it gives you the land mass you want to walk upon before it becomes flooded, it's your responsibility to then make sure that you preserve that thing, to be a steward of this planet. Because without that stewardship, individually and collectively, we'll never be able to achieve a sound, bright, beautiful, unifying, harmonious future that we should have. There's no reason we can't have something like that. But it's our responsibility to make that choice. And to take that step, to take that choice, is to sign up on that marketplace, to accumulate that data and all of these things that we're doing, and then share that with others. And through that sharing, through that open dialogue, right, through that uplifting of all people, that is what is going to preserve the future of our species. And that's an important thing. It's not going to be space travel for us, not leaving this world behind, but fixing the thing that we have absolutely abused. So let's invert that abuse and turn it into something that we can all applaud ourselves for. That's why you need to sign up on TARTLE.